Alright, tonight we're going to talk about two-sided material, and we're going to examine how the cloth material looks like. It's going to take approximately 15 minutes, and by the end of this lecture you'll be able to know how to set up the front and the back for the two-sided material and use all the parameters in order to make your cloth realistic. So some terminology before we start. Translucency, the term is used to describe light passing through thin opaque objects like paper or cloth. Front material, the material displayed in the front side of the face of its normal, and the back material is the back material that's been displayed on the back side of the face base in its normal. So here we have example of a paper, and we have the front and we have the back, but the minute we put it against the light we are able to see through what's on the back side of this paper. So thin objects like paper and cloth allow light to pass through them, even though the actual substance they are made of is not really transparent or refractive. So the paper is solid when it's lying down on the table. When such an object is illuminated from the back side, we see characteristics of the surface on the other side. Okay, so we can see through once we put it against the light. The illumination in the scene is crucial to properly convey the translucency of an object. So here we have the diffuse light. We can see it's the base color of that material. It's not affected by light. And then we have direct front. This is how it looks on the front, very shiny. And then we have the direct back. So we have different leaves here. We have this, which is one type of leaf, and then we have the other one. We can see that on the back side of a leaf, it's been more transparent. It's throwing a little bit more light. It looks a little bit more glowy. And we can see more pronunciation of a bump here. The shadows are much stronger, and we don't have any blurry reflections. And compared to the front side, where we have a lot of light picking up, we can see that the object is very translucent here, and it's bouncing quite a bit of that specular blurry reflections on the hot spots of the leaf. So in settings, front material is a slot for the material which is going to be used for front side faces as defined by the object normals. Back material is a slot for material VRay will use for back side faces as defined by the normals. This slot needs to be enabled with the checkbox to the side, otherwise VRay will use front material for both sides of the faces. So we have this check right here with the V. We have to put it in order to make the second back material work. Translucency determines which side, front or back, relative to the camera is more visible in the rendering process. By default, this value is 0.05, means half, which means that both sides facing the camera and one of the facing away from it will be visible to the same degree. When this parameter is closer to 0, more of the material facing the camera is going to be seen. When this material is closer to 1, more of the backside material is seen. Multiply, front diffuse, this parameter right here. When enabled, the translucency is multiplied by the diffuse of the front material. So in order to get more realistic result and see a little bit better of the front material, we're going to apply this one. And we're going to do some comparisons so we can see exactly what this is all about. Alright, so now let's get down to our demonstration. I'm going to open my two-sided material scene, start my interactive render, and I'm also going to stop it, open my slate editor and see what we've got here. The materials. Alright, so we can see we have, for the first test, I have two materials right here for the front, back, and then we have something a little bit more complicated. So first, let's start our interactive render here, and we can drag and drop two-sided material, or we can right click, go to VRay, then two-sided. Now let's select that cloth and click on the material and click assign. So the minute we assigned, the material started working, but there's no front and back side. We can see there are two chairs and some light standing. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the first material to the front and this red material to the back. And in order to see the back material, we need to activate it. So now we start to see the color coming in from the back. So if we check the translucency option, we can see if we put it on all the way up, so the front material is working. If we put it all the way back, the back material starts to work. And if we actually put it right here on the top, so we make it less transparent, we still can see that underneath we have this red material. It's still there, it's just not being seen. Alright, so let's put it back to about in the middle here. And what we can do is now let's connect the checkers. So we basically can put a texture in the translucency in order to control this whole thing with a procedural map. So you can see the checkers go black and white. We already saw that black is full front material and white is gonna put full back material, the red one, and with the checkers we get this nice cool result. And of course we can also use the transparency parameter here in order to control a little bit better how the translucency of those objects work. Alright, so 100% translucent, won't be able to see any of that map. 50% applied of that map, and then 100% of that map. You can see very solid result. Alright, so now let's move forward. I'm going to disconnect those guys. I'm gonna move it down, and I'm going to connect, actually going to delete it, and I'm going to apply this, the second two-sided material, to my model. Alright, so we can see this thing working here. Now let's go and see what we have in order to understand what we're working with. Okay, so we have front material, which is basic VRay material, and this VRay material got two maps. We can see one that's got kind of triangles, lines here, and one is probably very fine detail. So if we double click on this map, we can go and view image. So this is the image with the lines that we see, and we have another one which is that texture that gives nice cloth look to our material here. Those are the parameters of that, and we can see one is for the diffuse and one being used for the bump. Alright, to make it simulate a little bit more of those macro bumps, make the cloth not look very shiny and slick. Okay, now on the back side of the material we have this map, which gives us this pattern, which is very nice right here. Okay, and by using those, two of those, we get eventually this little cool looking result. Now what I'm gonna do here, I'm going to demonstrate that multiply by front diffuse. So I'm going to open my history and save that image into the history. Now I'm going to click to activate this, let it run a little bit so we can compare both results. So basically what it does, it multiplies the texture, and it kind of makes it from both sides transmit more light. So it looks a little bit more realistic when this option is on. So we get to get rid of the front material lines, which are less realistic, and we can see a little bit more from the back side because it's been multiplied. Alright, so I'm gonna stop this and save that. Now let's load one into A, one into B, and we can see already the big result, the big difference between two of those guys. So first, it works much more softer. Now we get to see that back side right here, which has been off and kind of disappearing from the first image. You also see those lines from the front material, which kind of disappears, and we start to see the backside material coming up and taking it over. We still have slight look of those lines. I mean, it's still there, but just because we have the light at the back, on the back side of the material, we start to see that pattern comes up. And I think it's more realistic look, because if you're gonna have cloth and you're gonna have light behind it, you're still gonna see some of the backside material. It's not gonna cut off abruptly like that, like in the first example. And we're gonna have something more like the second example, like this image, where we see the backside material comes up. All right, and I'm gonna start back my interactive render and show you the final option here of the 4 single-sided submaterial. So if we deactivate this, the material becomes very translucent, and we don't get the second side to work. We just get the front side, one side of the material. In some cases, it's easy fix. Things like lamps, when we don't really need to see the two sides or what's going on. Like with this cloth, we do need to have the force two-sided, because it's gonna otherwise it's not gonna look realistic. But for very simple materials, you know, like curtains or maybe lamps that transmit light, this option can do the trick, and it will be just good enough to see the inside. So for those that are trying to create something that is look very delicate, that's the option to go. Try those settings, and I'll see you in the next video.